I was hit by a real sense of purposelessness when I found out my wife had been unfaithful. I felt like I was looking at an abyss. I'd trusted her more than anyone else in my life. I loved and relied on her, and she'd betrayed me in the most shameless way. I had to fix everything. I packed my suitcase and took one last look around the bedroom with a melancholy sigh. The sleigh bed we'd bought to replace our old one seemed to be mocking me. She could have it all. In fact, I was leaving in a pretty good situation. The house was completely, she wanted it more than I did so she could have it. Our kids' college fund was almost fully covered. Joe had already moved out of the dorms because of his partying, and was paying for his own classes at a community college. Yesterday we got the notification that he was eligible to return to university, which would unlock the funds from his educational trust, allowing him to get back on track. He said he'd learned his lesson. Even better, it scared our daughter into staying in line. She had a GPA of 3. After her first semester, Carol and I had a disagreement about cutting Joe off, but I stood my ground. Part of going to college is growing up, and he had to learn that his actions had consequences. I gave a wry smile, thinking about how Carol was about to learn that lesson too. I opened my phone and printed the picture I had taken earlier that night of Carol and some guy slow dancing. I left the photo, my wedding ring, and my lawyer's business card on the table where she would find them. I put on my jacket and left the house for the last time. I'd been on the road for 2 hours when my phone rang. I knew I'd have to talk to her eventually, but now wasn't the right time, so I set it to vibrate. I'd got a new job in South Carolina. My boss was surprised when I got the job, and even more so when I asked if I could move down there early. I was planning to take a day to find a place and a couple more days to meet the team. The previous plant manager had left everything in a mess, so I was arriving as a bit of a savior. I expected a lot of long days at first, but that was fine with me as I didn't plan on being a social butterfly anytime soon. I was still in pretty good shape at 46, but I was ready for a change. I had enough work to keep me busy, and I was hoping that my love for my wife would fade with time and distance. I stopped at a truck stop to refuel and take a break. I planned to get I had just taken a sip of. I was drinking my diet soda when my phone vibrated again. It didn't seem like she was giving up. I suppose now was as good a time as any. "What's going on?" said the voice on the other end. "Where did you get this picture? Why is your wedding ring on the table? And most importantly, where the hell are you?" "Hello, Carol. I took the picture tonight at Red Horn. My ring is on the table. Because it no longer means anything to me. I'm about 10 hours away from Charleston, South Carolina." "Wait, what do you mean it no longer means anything?" "South Carolina, Joe? What the hell is happening?" I sigh. "In the past 2 weeks, you haven't been going to Sir's house like you told me. Instead, you've been going to Red Horn to grab drinks. I followed you last week and saw you slow dancing with the guy in the picture. When the boss mentioned a promotion in South Carolina, I jumped at the chance. I went to the lawyers and worked out a settlement that I believe is more than fair. I thought maybe I misinterpreted what I saw. So I followed you again tonight and saw you dancing with the same guy. I probably should have talked to you about it last week. But honestly, your lie about where you were made it hard to believe anything you said." I told her that was Mike Horn from sales and he's married. She said quickly, "Devin was married too." I replied quietly. There was silence on the other end. I realized she had been holding her breath and she exhaled as I took another sip of my soda. I could hear her breathing heavily. "You haven't mentioned that name in more than 5 years. I thought we were past that," she said. "I know you thought so too, but seeing you sneaking around behind my back and meeting another man at a bar brought everything back to the surface. I can't go through this again, Carol. Your affair with Dion nearly. It was a tough time for me. I can't handle a second one. The kids are set. The house is paid off with your salary. You can stay if I leave you the house. Our credit card debt is minimal and I'll pay it off. I've got a new job and they're providing me with a furnished apartment for the first year. There's no need to make this hard. Go to my lawyer and pick up the papers if you don't. I'll have them sent to you and you can review them with your lawyer. You'll see it's a fair deal if you sign. We can end this in 6 months and move on with our lives. A clean break is the best for both of us. I said tiredly, Joe, nothing happened between Mike and me. Siri was there and you know she wouldn't let anything bad happen. I know it looks bad and I'm kicking myself for lying to you. We can work this out. I can explain everything. Carol, it doesn't matter even if your dance could cure cancer. I'd still be leaving. You don't understand the pain and suffering I endured because of you and Devin. Lie to me, you'd think you'd want to end this marriage so you could drink and dance without worrying about a jealous husband at home. I know I probably haven't made it easy for you to do what you want, but now you can. Joe, that's not fair. All I've ever wanted was to be with you. Even when I was foolish with Devin, I never wanted. I was emotionally and hormonally unstable at the time and he took advantage of that. We spent months in therapy to get through it. She cried. I know, Carol. I know what you told me, what the counselor said, what the doctor said. But I also know how I felt when I found out you were dancing with another man in a bar. I know how I felt when you lied to me. Let's talk about what's fair. How fair was it that I went through the pain of losing a child alone? I didn't have anyone by my side who understood or was willing to support and comfort me. How fair was it that I spent more than a year alone relying on myself for relief while you were with the charlatan? I've had enough. Just sign the papers and let's get this marriage over with. I said it coldly, not wanting to hear her sobs, so I pressed the button to end the call. Mentally I shrugged and tried to regain my detached mood. I drove another 35 miles and took an exit with hotels. By the time I fell asleep I was mostly fine. The next day was a long drive. My phone started ringing at 7. I kept getting calls from my daughter every hour on the half hour. When I stopped for fast food I noticed one of the calls was from her. I called her back. Dad, what's going on? Mom said you left her. I said yes, sweetheart. She told me she'd been lying to me for the past 2 weeks. I just can't deal with that anymore. She says she was just trying to help. She says you misunderstood and that you accepted a job in South Carolina without talking to her. Is there something else going on, Dad? So spill it. She was pretty bossy, wasn't she? Now that you're an adult, I'm going to give you some background on where I stand. When your little brother passed away, both your mom and I went into deep depression. You might remember your mom being completely out of it. After Key died I stayed in touch with the family for a while, but then I found out that your mom had started an affair with a colleague at work. It lasted about 6 months. She was going through it alone while she was getting help from someone else. I paused to control my emotions. I had no idea why I stayed with her. My daughter asked me softly because I really loved her, but mostly because the cost of leaving was too high. If I'd divorced her, I'd have been broke and only seen you and your brother on weekends. You'd have had to deal with a broken family on top of losing a sibling. I'd have had to pay child support, alimony, and hospital bills. I wouldn't have been able to live in the house. Your mom had been on bed rest for 6 months before Key was born and hadn't returned to work full time. Also meant that her income was almost non-existent. I decided it was best to focus on the family and work on our marriage. I have to give her credit, she said and did all the right things, and I really did love her, but I can't go through that again. Seeing her dance with another man was too painful even though they weren't kissing. She lied to me and everything came flooding back. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I really hoped it would. I've been trying to work out, but I just can't do it. I know it might not make sense to anyone else, but the pain I felt last night was just as intense as it was 7 years ago. Dad, I had no idea. We were all really messed up after Key, but I can't believe she did that to you. What an idiot. I just wanted to let you know that I didn't tell you this to cause problems with your mom. I was just trying to explain that I didn't walk away over one dance. You're old enough to know that she's your mom and she loves you. She did the same thing to me, so I kindly asked you to stay out of it. Focus on your education and remember you have 2 parents who love you. I promise you things will stay civil and we won't involve you or Joe Jr. in this." I said, "Yeah, that's not going to happen, Dad," she replied with a hint of a smile in her voice. "I need time to process all this. I'm going to call you later today and you better answer the phone. I know how you like to disappear when you're stressed, but don't you dare do that to me or Joe. We'll find you and camp outside your door. I love you, Dad." "Hang in there," she said before hanging up. I just left Ohio when I saw my son's number on my phone. I knew I'd have to talk to him eventually, so I decided to answer the call. "Dad, she's a mess." Joe Jr. greeted me. Joe Jr. and I had a good, sometimes tense relationship. I loved him deeply, but we both had strong wills and we tended to stand our ground when we believed we were right. This led to some intense confrontations during his teenage years usually. It was Cole who had to step in and calm us down. She could make him see reason, while if I used the same words in the same tone it would probably end in a physical fight. Don't get me wrong. I love my son and would do anything for him. We're just very alike. "I'm sorry to hear that, son." I said she didn't do anything wrong this time. "Dad, if you forgive her, why are you leaving now?" he asked. I was a bit surprised that he knew about Carol's affair. "Did she tell you about?" "I didn't think you knew about that. I overheard a phone call years ago where she told that guy it was over and that she was going to tell you on Friday. He said he didn't know what she was talking about, but I figured it was something bad when you sent us to Grandma and Grandpa's for the weekend. Sunday night was the darkest I'd ever seen the house. Even worse than when you came home from the hospital without a key. After a while I figured it out. What she did you have no idea." I said, "So what's the big deal now, Dad? Why are you running away?" I told her she was an idiot for lying to you, but she didn't do anything. "Can't you at least go back and talk to her? You always tell me to face my problems like a man. Now it seems like you're being a coward." Joe said, "Maybe I am being a coward and you can judge me all you want. When you're in my position you can choose your own course of action. Then I'll tell you the same thing I told your sister. Stay out of my personal life. I'm proud of you for standing your ground and going back to school. I'm going to hang up now before either of us says something we regret later." He made a valid point. I had been avoiding why I was so suddenly upset and decisive. 7 years after the affair I had to ask myself why. I hadn't thought about Carol's affair for a couple of years until she started lying to me. I wish I had an answer to that question. The only thing that comes to mind is that maybe I never really forgave her. Still, that doesn't quite fit considering I've been genuinely happy for the last few years. I truly believed I had moved past it. Well, maybe I should consider seeing a counselor once I'm settled in my new place. I'm not sure how much my therapist helped me understand that I'm reacting this strongly now because I crossed the border into South Carolina. I focused on planning what I needed to do with the new plant to get things up and running and shutting out the incessant buzzing of my phone. 8 months later today marked a significant moment. I accepted the mail and looked at the large envelope in front of me. I was finally free. Carol resisted for a month, then suddenly gave in and signed the papers. I was surprised. During our phone conversation she explained that she was helping a man cope with the loss of his newborn and that the dance was just part of the environment they were in. She mentioned feeling uncomfortable when he asked her to dance but agreed to avoid causing a scene. The following week she danced with him once more and that was it. She insisted that he wasn't making any moves but that it bothered her enough to consider. She stopped going out with us altogether when I asked her why she didn't tell me or ask my advice since I'd been through something similar. She nearly broke down saying she was worried it would bring up her past affair and she didn't want to hurt me. She'd planned to talk to him and encourage him to seek counseling because she thought it wasn't a big issue since others were there. However, I couldn't get past the deception despite what Carol said. I spoke to my friends, Siri, Abby, and even Mike himself, and they all said that nothing more than an uncomfortable dance happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was to blame for it, but my feelings for my wife had changed irreversibly. I still loved her, but I no longer wanted to be married to her. My new therapist suggested that I never truly forgave her, and these unresolved feelings resurfaced, making it impossible for me to move on. Looking at the envelope, I decided not to open it yet. I climbed the 2 flights of stairs to my apartment and sorted through the rest of my mail. I heard shouting in the hallway and looked up to see a muscular man pinning my neighbor Letitia against the wall and shouting in her face, "You can't break up with me. We'll be done when I say so. Now go to that apartment and put something attractive on." I recognized the voice as belonging to my company's CEO. I punched him in the side. I know it wasn't entirely fair to hit him from behind, but I figured all was lost when he raised his hand against a woman. I wanted to hit him again, but suddenly he stood on tiptoe and my neighbor grabbed him tightly. "Listen here, idiot," she hissed. "If you touch me again, I'll kill you." She was panting, tears in her eyes. He nodded, frantically sobbing, while she probably gave him one last squeeze. She let him go and limp-lined down the hallway. "Letitia." I watched him leave and then slumped against the wall, tears streaming down her face. I crouched down beside her and put my hand on her shoulder. I made spaghetti and I always make too much, so I suggested she come in and help me eat some. She nodded and I helped her up, guiding her into my apartment. The company had provided me with a nice 3-bedroom apartment within walking distance of the factory. They were paying the rent for a year. After 2 months I was seriously considering staying. We didn't have a pool, but we could use the one in the neighboring complex. There was also a great gym. That's where I met Lay, my neighbor. I found myself stuck in an unrelenting work cycle, often working 14 to 16 hours a day followed by sleep. My doctor warned me that it was a heart attack waiting to happen and advised me to cut back, adopt healthier eating habits and start exercising. As for exercise, I followed the usual doctor's advice. I limited my work days to 12 hours and started going to the gym. In the midst of all the chaos of work and the divorce proceedings, I discovered that intense workouts helped me escape, if only temporarily. Maybe it wasn't so different from seeking comfort in alcohol, but at least this way I was sculpting a set of abs instead of developing a beer belly during my post-workout. Letitia often joined me for a workout and we'd chat a bit. She wore a tracksuit that showed off her figure, and though her curly hair was tied back in a ponytail and she didn't wear makeup, her rosy cheeks and radiant smile exuded a charming allure. Her clothes highlighted her coconut-colored skin in a way that was attractive. Letitia was in her final year of medical school and had a modest trust fund, but when I saw her in the hallway of our building, she seemed like a young woman who could use some support. I poured her a glass of wine and started boiling water for tea. I sat down on the couch and she scooted closer, curling up next to me. My dad used to intimidate my mom. He'd pin her against the wall just like Tyrant did to me, and he always raised his hand to her. I despised my father for it, but I was too scared to intervene. My mom would cry and I couldn't summon the courage to tell him to stop. I was terrified when T pinned me against the wall. It was only when I saw you behind him and realized you had hit him that I could think clearly. "Thank you," she said, looking at me with her beautiful brown eyes. "I'm glad I could help. Thanks for joining me for dinner. You're the first person I've had dinner with outside of work." We enjoyed the meal, talked and had a wonderful time. I even got another kiss when she left at midnight. 2 months later we started to develop a close relationship. It began quite innocently as she felt a bit down about celebrating my 47th birthday alone. She insisted on taking me to a bar with her friends. Maybe she mentioned it. My mood was lifted by the fact that 4 of her friends in their 22nds were flirting with me and surrounding me all night. It was thrilling. One of her friends even asked if she could join in on the birthday fun. "Will you let me take part in pleasing the birthday boy?" she teased, making my face flush with embarrassment. I was just starting to realize it was a joke. When Letitia chimed in, "Sorry girls, but this white boy is having dark meat tonight," she announced with a mischievous grin, giving me a predatory smile. Letitia stayed by my side until the end of the night. Overall, it was an amazing night that only got better with time. When we got home, Letitia didn't pretend to go to her apartment instead. She stayed at my door until I opened it without a word. She walked in and went straight to my fridge, grabbed 2 bottles of water and closed the door. "Letitia, you've been drinking and I'm not sure this is a good idea." I replied, "I've only been drinking water for the last 3 bars, so I'm light." She was headed but not drunk. "Secondly, this isn't about feelings. It's about 2 people needing to satisfy their desires," she declared, continuing her actions. "Why not? What are you talking about? I thought as we moved to the couch to watch tonight, you belonged to me." She said it was the best night of her life. The rays of dawn filtered through the window, illuminating a beautiful woman with bronze skin stretched out on my pillow. I put my hands behind my head. My mind was on the night before with Letitia. She was great, but I knew we wouldn't have a future together once my kids were grown up. I wasn't interested in starting over and I wasn't in love with her. She was my first friend since I moved here and I wanted the best for her. I was happy to help in any way, but there was no question of a traditional romantic relationship. So what about last night? Just 2 adults having a bit of fun. I said, "Joe, I hope it didn't ruin our friendship. You're amazing and I care about you a lot, but we both know we're not meant to be together long term. I want kids, a career and all that. After I graduate from mid-school, I'll move wherever my work takes me. You've never shown interest in starting over with kids and a mortgage." She replied with a smile. "That's true. I've been there, done that. I enjoyed it and wouldn't mind doing it again. But if it makes things too awkward for you, it can be a one-time thing. Personally, I prefer we stay friends for both our benefits with no obligations. Just 2 friends who enjoy each other's company when we feel like it. What do you say?" I'd never been in a situation where friends had benefits and I wasn't sure what to do, but it seemed like we were on the same page. Here I was, a 47-year-old. I'm 47 years old. An older guy who'd been in a serious relationship for the last 25 years was being offered something pretty extraordinary. I decided to adopt a more youthful mindset and act like I was 27, not 47. "I doubt you could keep up with me from this side of the bed." I joked and she looked at me. So I figured I'd said something wrong. But then she burst out laughing and moved closer after the morning meeting. Letitia made it clear that we weren't an exception. "Joe, I'll be busy with school and eventually I might start seeing other guys. I expect to see some women leaving your place with a frown too. You're too good to waste your life moping at home. Live a little, do something. You've got a great body, a full head of hair and a voice that's well seductive. Be selfish and indulge yourself." I did that and she left. I sat down and made a list of things I'd wanted to do but hadn't because of family commitments. At the top was buying a motorcycle. When I went to the dealers they said I should take a safety course. It was a weekend session that cost $85 and included written and skills assessments. When I finished, I'd get a card. This meant I could get my DMV endorsement and a discount on insurance. With my new license in hand, I explored the used bike section at the local Harley dealership. The price of a new Harley and the long waiting list were a bit discouraging and I didn't see anything I liked. Just as I was about to leave, the salesman approached me and mentioned that a woman in their motorcycle group had recently acquired her ex. My partner's bike was part of a divorce settlement and was in great condition. It matched what I was looking for, so I agreed to buy all the accessories from them. They offered to give me your contact information, so I accepted and called the number. I ended up on the north side of town a couple of hours later. I didn't know what to expect, but it certainly wasn't this. The houses here must have been worth millions. I drive a 3-year-old foo. I was meeting someone I'd met on the internet. I'd arranged to meet them at a gated community. When I arrived, the guard directed me to the address. I saw a beautiful Harley in the driveway. The garage was open, revealing what appeared to be a duplicate of the bike parked next to it. New Alexis, the place had a really affluent feel to it. The woman who greeted me was stunning, impeccably groomed with the perfect combination of hairstyle, outfit, perfume, and posture. I was taken aback. She approached me confidently and extended her hand. "Hello, I'm Connie, this is my ex. When we shook hands she said, "This is my husband's bike." She was a standout. She came across as professional and determined, but there was a warmth and charm that made her immediately likable. I found myself captivated not just by her appearance, but by her demeanor. My natural courtesy along with years of experience kicked in, my professionalism kicked in, and I was pleased to meet you, Connie. Thank you for accommodating my visit on such short notice to see the bike. Taylor at the shop mentioned you seemed like a genuine buyer, not just an observer. She proceeded to give me the details about she went on to talk about the bike, its features, the engine, and the fairing. I was so taken by her that I simply watched her, gathering the courage to ask her out. I had already decided to buy the bike when she finished her presentation. I found myself still staring at her. She blushed and I snapped out of my trance. "I'll take the bike tomorrow, but there's one thing, you have to let me take you to dinner tonight or tomorrow, otherwise forget it." She gave me a piercing look, then a small smile. She said she agreed and shook my hand. She was the perfect balance of firm and feminine. She looked stunning when she walked into the restaurant. I had Googled which wine to pair with our dinner, so I felt confident. I briefly considered bringing flowers, but decided that might be too intimate. Mentally, I reminded myself to relax and go with the flow. The food was good, but the company was exceptional. 6 months had passed since her divorce was finalized and she reflected on what we might have done things differently. We met in law school and spent 20 years together. She shared that he suddenly started going to the gym, spending a lot of money on gadgets, getting ear implants and having an affair with his secretary. Could a divorce be more cliché? She paused to take a sip of wine before continuing. They say a scorned woman is the most dangerous, but a scorned award-winning divorce attorney is much worse. I made sure to leave him reeling. It turned out she was pregnant and since he was sterile, there was no way the child was his. I kicked him out and he came crawling back. I told him to get lost and put his bike up for sale, just to hurt him even more. She still seemed angry with him, though I admired her determination. It seems she recognized that once trust is broken, there's little left to save. She composed herself and gave me a warm, captivating smile. "So, what's your story? Your accents suggest you're from the Midwest, but your truck plates suggest you're now a South Carolina native. You don't have a wedding ring, and you don't have tan lines either. I'd guess you're not married, probably divorced or widowed. Your truck suggests a decent job, but the fact that you can afford a Harley in cash implies you see vehicles purely as utilities. How am I doing?" she inquired. "I'm doing pretty well," I replied. "I manage the Al Steel plant, so the job's decent. I've been divorced for a year. I moved here from Michigan to escape the memories of family and my ex. My wife and I have 2 kids in college who we keep in touch with just enough to get their tuition checks. I love them, but I wish our relationship was more balanced. Other than that, there's not much else to tell." I told her I missed having someone to come home to. She asked what I missed most about being married. I paused to think. To and share the day with. I really appreciated the anticipation of spending time with my family, I replied, and she burst into laughter. "I need to work on my flirting skills," she joked. "You should have said you missed the regular intimacy, then I'd have said there's no reason to miss it if you find the right person. And then you'd ask where." "I'll find such a woman," I said, and I felt my cheeks flush. "Where would I find such a lady?" "I played along right here," she whispered, leaning forward and emphasizing her curves on the way to her place. I stopped at a service station and bought a pack of protection. When I received the message that her door was, I opened the door and walked in. I noticed her skirt on the floor and a pair of stockings near the stairs. A trail of clothes led me to what seemed to be her bedroom. When I opened the door, I found her lying on a large bed. I took the opportunity and we spent a pleasant night together. I woke up at midnight and realized it was exactly 12. I went to the bathroom and slipped back under the covers, pulling her close. "Thank you for this," she murmured, meeting my gaze. I couldn't help but laugh. "Really, anytime, just let me know." I responded with a smile. She gave me a playful smile in return. I appreciate it so much. Honestly, it's been tough lately. With the divorce and all the challenges of being newly single, plus I'm getting ready for my move. I just needed some intimate connection and comfort. Do you think I'm being too demanding? She asked. I don't think so. I completely understand. I'm just not sure about the etiquette in this situation. I like you. I enjoyed our time together and I'd like to see you again, but if you're not interested, I understand. When do you move? I have to be in Boston in 4 weeks, which is part of the reason I wanted to sell the Harley. I'll be very busy and won't have much free time. She needed to move on and wasn't interested in repeating the experience. It hurt a little, but not terribly. She'd had a night of good company and connection. How could that be bad? She smiled at him. I understand. I'll take an Uber tomorrow to pick up the bike. I hope your move goes well, he said as he started to gather his clothes. Oh my God, I should have been clearer. My thoughts get jumbled around you, she said, burying her face in the pillow. I'm not saying I don't want to see you again. I just mean I can't commit to a relationship because I'm leaving in a month. I turned her toward me and kissed her. Then I said, let's make the most of the next few weeks and enjoy each other. She smiled and nodded before drifting off to sleep. I got dressed and kissed her forehead before leaving. When I got home, I ran into Letitia, who she said she'd be waiting for me. She also said she had a big exam tomorrow and she could use some help tonight. I was surprised. I stammered. Ah, sure. What are you studying? She teased. Let's call it anatomy. She moved closer to me. I was panicking. I said, could you help me with something first? I blurted out, but it was too late. I was afraid I'd made a mistake. She burst into laughter. She said, oh, little man, you've been busy tonight. Tell me what's going on. I replied. That's not happening, sweetie. He just found out he's recently divorced and needed some help. Letitia gave me an impatient look. Did you use protection? I responded. Yes, I did. Do you think you've got another round in you? She asked with a playful grin. God knows I'll try. I'll take a shower and then we'll see. I replied. It's fine. I'm a 47-year-old. I'm 47 years old. I said. Letitia seemed to be in a strange mood, so I decided not to stop there. What followed was the most incredible intimacy I've experienced in my 47 years. We finished and I nearly passed out. We quickly showered and then returned to bed where she cuddled up beside me. After reflecting on the strange turn my life had taken, I finally fell asleep the next morning. I went to pick up my bike and Connie seemed a little concerned. Is everything okay, Joe? I don't usually have one-night stands, but I'm in a good mood right now. She told me I smile because one-night stands aren't really my style. But if it's like last night, I could reconsider. I replied. Have you ever thought about moving to Boston? She asked. I smiled and kissed her. I'm not a fan of the cold. I've spent enough winters in Michigan to know I prefer the sunshine. I responded. She blushed. That must have sounded strange.